Chocolate. I bet that got your attention. It certainly got mine when I received an email about a man with the nickname Willy Wonka of the Midwest. Further, when I found out that that man is a second generation chocolatier of a company that got its start 350 years ago, I knew I had to have him on as a guest on the Real Food Traveler podcast. I'm Courtney Drake McDonough, the host of the podcast and publisher of the RealFoodTraveler.com digital culinary travel magazine. My guest today is Dan Abel Jr., whose title is Chief Chocolate Officer of two beloved St. Louis-based companies, Bissinger's Handcrafted Chocolatier and also the Chocolate Company. That's a lot of chocolate, Dan. I'm so ready to talk about it all with you today. Thanks so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
We're going to focus on Bissinger's Handcrafted Chocolatier today, but tell us a little bit about the other company too, because, chocolate.
Absolutely. So, my father apprenticed as a candy maker in college, and it was kind of a job that he picked up in a warehouse for a candy company. And I think the original intent was him just to, pick up a side job while he was away in school, but kind of fell in love with the chocolate business. And so he had asked to move, learn other things. So he had moved out of the warehouse into the candy kitchen, into the retail stores, and then into the office where he started putting together some wholesale deals. And so at a young age, he kind of really learned, quite a bit about the chocolate industry, and that was it. He moved back to St. Louis after college. He spent some additional time up in Ohio, and he moved back to St. Louis, which was his hometown, to start his own candy company in February of 1981. And then in May, he married my mom. So they had their marriage and business all started in the same year. And they've been together for over 40 years, the business for over 40 years. And then my brother, sister, and I all got involved in the business at different times. And so the three of us are oversee both companies now. And my parents are still involved in more of a part-time fashion and more of an advisory role. And then the company Chocolate came to its name because my parents had three kids. So I am
Yeah.
the second chocolate.
Okay, that's great. I kind of wondered about that, besides just being a really catchy title.
Yep.
So, what exactly does your wonderful title of Chief Chocolate Officer mean you do?
That's a great question. Every day it's a little bit different. We love to, normalcy is like a problem for us. If we all of a sudden get comfortable with what we're doing, we want to go do something different, whether it's adding another production line or creating a new product that's different. Right now, have embarked into this. We're in the second year of this multi-million-dollar factory expansion. So we've expanded the production facility several times, but we ran out. We were, up until last year, landlocked. We've done as much as we could on the property, so we were able to purchase the property next door, tear it down, and then design this wonderful new factory expansion. But then, as my brother, sister, and I were kind of sitting at the conference table one day, we put all of these "what if we do this" type scenarios kind of on this idea board, and pretty much we took every single one of those concepts. So now the new factory expansion will have, of course, more manufacturing, more warehouse, more storage, more capabilities. But we're also opening a coffee shop and cafe, as well as a private speakeasy bar.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Bissinger dates back a very long time, as I said, 350 years. Can you give us an overview of the history of the company?
Absolutely. So in the 1600s is when the Bissingers family got their start, and they were based in Paris, France. And it was in 1668 where King Louis XIV appointed the Bissingers family as the Confesseur Impérial, which in English translates to confectioner to the empire. And at that point, the Bissingers products were mostly consumed and enjoyed at the Palace of Versailles, not only by the king and queen, but every time they had lavish parties at the palace or invited guests from around the world, it was always about Bissingers. And in the late 1600s was this gilded age of sweets and desserts coming into Paris. So it was kind of just this ultimate timing to be a chocolatier. But we're not 100% sure if they still maintain a retail presence. From everything we can find, that they were pretty much just serving the royal palace at that point in time. And it wasn't until the 1800s when they moved the company to the United States, when they actually opened up their first Bissinger's retail shop for the public. So for centuries, it became pretty much a royal treat.
So when they came to the US, did they go straight to St. Louis? Was that the first place to open?
No, they made a detour. We always joke that it was the Bissinger's detour. They started in Cincinnati, Ohio, and they opened up in Cincinnati. And then there were two sons. The one son, so the father's name was Carl Bissinger, which we identify him as Carl Frederick Bissinger, and then his son was named Carl Bissinger. So when Carl Frederick passed away, the his wife took over the company, and she was actually the first female to own a candy company in the United States in the late 1800s. And then shortly after that happened, Carl, the son, decided to move to St. Louis. And so he and his main candy maker that he learned how to craft chocolates with moved to St. Louis. There were two Bissingers in the late 1800s and early 1900s. So what he had to do was he called his St. Louis company Carl Bissinger French Confections, whereas the Cincinnati company was Bissinger's. So he added the Carl in front of it. Since then, uh, Carl Bissinger French Confections then actually did merge with Bissinger's of Cincinnati, and we're the only Bissingers now that exists. But that was the brothers when they split up, and one stayed in Cincinnati and then one moved to St. Louis. So it was Carl Bissinger, the son, that actually brought the company here.
Gotcha. Okay. Having a family-run business is quite a feat anyway, but having one for 350 years is pretty staggering. What do you think is the reason that all those generations of family members have been willing and interested in sticking with it?
There's something about the Bissingers. I mean, going back to the last recipe book that we have is from 1899. And of course, you know, that's only half of the Bissingers history, or even less than half the Bissingers history. So I'm sure things that they made in the early 1800s were in that recipe book, but the one that we work off is from 1899. And the ingredients are so pure and so clean. I mean, you know, because the product goes back hundreds of years. This was before preservatives, before artificial ingredients. So it's just pure whole ingredients that make the Bissinger's products. And it's one of those things when you try it, you become a fan. And I had, was a customer and known of Bissinger's well before we owned the company. So I have experienced Bissinger's on both sides of the table as an owner and as a customer walking into one of their stores. And there's just this mystere about, you know, being, a box of Bissinger's confections in some way ties you to 1600s Palace of Versailles, France. And so for us to keep that consistency and to keep what was important for the brand in the 1700s and 1800s is really important for us today because there's just no other story ever told like Bissinger's. There's no other brand that we have never found a chocolate company that goes back to 1600s Paris. There are some very old confectioners across in the United States and across the world, but we cannot find a single company that goes back that far. So we believe we're the oldest chocolate company in the world.
Mhm. So there are Bissinger family members to this day currently
Mhm.
involved.
Yeah, we have a lot of Bissinger customers. A lot of our,
Oh, really?
yeah, we always there are some Bissinger family members that are spread out throughout the United States, but a lot of the Bissingers still order.
That's really interesting. How would you say things have stayed the same over the years, and how have they changed over the years in terms of how you make the chocolates? I know you just said you're working from a cookbook from 1899. So I'm curious to know how things have morphed.
Great question. There's really three parts to the process for us. And so most people, and we give factory tours, and so this the claim we always made about truly handmade, we can very much validate it and back it up when someone comes on a tour and sees it. But there's really three main processes in making the product. There's the candy kitchen where we're crafting, and that's where we're starting from the raw materials of sugar, butter, milk, tree nuts. And making our caramels, our toffee, our molasses puff, our cream centers, and that side of the business, that part of the building, it looks like you walk back into time 100 years. I mean, literally, we have the cream machine that makes the French fondant for the Bissinger's creams was made in 1931. We have mixers that we use which is from the 1950s, and that's the exact style that Carl Bissinger used. So we have Carl Bissinger's mixer, and then we have two other ones, and we just keep repairing them and replacing parts. And so the exact techniques of candy making to make the caramel, the kettles themselves are copper kettles. They're antique. Some of them are over 100 years old. Copper is the most amazing way to cook caramel because the even distribution of heat. And so that style, if you look at a picture from 1920, Bissinger's Candy Kitchen, and you look at our candy kitchen and this beautiful new facility that we're in, it's almost identical. What then the next process is the hand dipping of chocolates. Every one of our confections is hand dipped in stripes. So we have the I Love Lucy style enrobing lines where we put, say it's a caramel, the caramel goes on and gets its waterfall coating of chocolate. But then every single piece is still hand decorated and striped. And there's a striping guide. So if you look at the vanilla caramel, there's actually a V on it. If you look at a vanilla caramel from, we have the first printed Bissinger's catalog was from 1972. And the 1972 Bissinger's catalog, the vanilla caramels had a V on it. So none of that has changed either. The only thing that changes for us is, for example, a chocolate bar. We still handcraft the chocolate bar, and sprinkle toppings on it. We still, cook the caramel in the same copper kettle style, but we have this automated boxing machine because our team loves decorating truffles and decorating caramels and hand packing assortments. But taking a chocolate bar and sliding it into a box and tucking it closed, after about 45 minutes, everyone kind of gets a little bored of that. So we put some automation in for the packaging, but every other process that we do at Bissinger's is the same as it was in the turn of the century.
Wow, that's so impressive. And I'm so glad you explained why the copper kettle, because I've always wondered why you associate chocolate making with those copper kettles, and now I know for even heat distribution. Th This may be kind of a difficult question to answer, but has the company ever made something that was just kind of a dud?
Yeah, all the time. And we, and part of it is that we never consider it a failure. Like for example, we have some of these, we do a vault series in August and September and sometimes October where we take some old recipes from the original recipe book and recreate them. And all of them that we've released at one time were some of the most popular Bissinger's confections, and some of them are the reason Bissinger's is famous. And as we've recreated them and released them, we have some customers that have been customers at Bissinger's for over 50 and 60 years that have done tastings that have identified them as this tastes exactly the way they remember them. So a once famous product recreated in the exact way. Some of them do really well. They sell it very quickly and it's always and then some of them it just falls flat. And so we don't really consider it a failure. We just, it's our way of, constantly working on either bringing a traditional product back or creating something new and then just truly getting instant feedback of what our customer likes. So when it comes to, we print and produce 7 national catalogs still, and then we have the website, which is always updating. So as we're creating new products, whether it's an adaptation of an old recipe or whether it's a completely new creation, we never really hear, oh, I didn't like this product. What we typically hear, what we typically just don't see it sell as well. And then it allows us to reflect, well, was it the packaging? Was it the price point? Or do customers just not like French almond anymore? Or whatever it is. And um, I think that inspires us to create the next product. So there's, and even if it's not a huge seller, our customers are seeing new innovations and recreations all the time. So it's keeping the brand fresh.
Mhm. I'm glad you um sorry, I just completely lost track of what I was going to ask you
I do that
about.
all the time, so I get
Oh,
it.
yes, I know that. I was just talking yesterday to somebody about the cookies and candies we had as kids, and we thought they were so amazing. And now you go back to have them, and it's just not the same. They're just not made the same, and they
Yep.
don't taste the same. So that's so interesting that you have people come in and are able to tell you, yes, this tastes the same as it did, or, potentially they would tell you otherwise. But because you're following all these recipes and using all these great ingredients, I can see why they still taste the same. So on the other side of the dud question, what were some of the most popular flavors that you have discovered from way back when, from hundreds of years ago, versus what flavors are super popular now?
Great question. A lot of things have kind of gone in phases. For example, Bissinger's, in the 40s and 50s, when Carl Bissinger who was the last Bissinger to own the company, when he was still head candy maker and running the business, had a huge product line of bonbons. And so, what is a bonbon to Bissinger's? That would be either a caramel center or a candied nut, and then each one would be dipped in fondant. They also did fondant mints and sandwich fondant mints, and they had this popular confection that was a marshmallow dipped in a mint fondant, and it was green, and then half dipped in chocolate. And all of those fondant-based bonbons, I mean, sometimes we release them just for the nostalgic of it, but those have kind of gone away. People seem to really love, caramels have been popular since they've been created. But we fully cover almost everything in chocolate now, where a lot of times Bissinger's dipped things just with a little bit of chocolate. Like, for example, still to this day, our glacéed apricots and glacéed oranges are only half dipped in chocolate. So you see the beautiful candied orange, you see half that, and the rest of it's half dipped in chocolate. That product, which has been around for Bissinger since at least 1920, um, has was very representative of what a typical Bissinger's confection would be in the past, where it was half dipped in chocolate. Where now we fully enrobe almost everything in chocolate, and caramel is the king. Salted caramels are one of our most popular items. English almond toffee, and then our truffle selection. We do so many different types of truffles, from we do seasonal collections to an everyday assortments. As well. But really from bonbons to salted caramels is where we've gone in 100 years.
Can you define or explain what a fondant is?
Absolutely. And fondant this is a great example where I think that the way it's made today by other places it's been completely ruined. Bissinger's French fondant recipe is one of the oldest recipes, and for us is we actually cook sugar, two different types of sugar, and on a scientific level, we're taking a simple sugar and we're inverting it and creating it into a complex sugar. So it's that syrup, that process. We actually measure by hydrometer reading. So it's not a temperature-based thing. It's not a time-based thing. It's actually the water activity that we're measuring the hydrometer. So a very, very old instrument that we're using for this. And then that will go into this cream mixer, cream beater, and then that actually will turn into this white paste looking. But a Bissinger's fondant is just the simple ingredients of the sugars that we're cooking together, and it's so dense. And then when it cooks into a cream center, it becomes this really smooth, raspberry cream or lemon cream. And what happens is today we starch cast, which is about the oldest technology or the oldest confectionery technique in candy making centers, where most brands have converted to extruding. And in order to extrude, you have to add a lot of what we call fillers, a lot of adjunct ingredients in there to get it through the extruder. And so most people just really don't like creams anymore. You know, when you hear about the word cream in a box chocolate assortment, it's kind of this, it's kind of like the, oh no, why did I get that piece? But at Bissinger's, it's one of our most popular pieces and sells so well because we haven't changed the recipe of the fondant. And it's extremely hard to do, but it's the Bissinger's way, and we wouldn't have it any other way.
Mhm. And I have to just mention those apricots, because you were generous enough to send me a few chocolates to a few of your products, to sample so that I would know what of what I speak and of what we were talking about, since I am not able to be right there in St. Louis and pop into one of your shops. But those apricots, oh my God,
Aren't
they
they
were,
something?
I mean, the people I shared it with said, "Are these real apricots?" Because they were so plump and tender and, not like dried fruit. I think people, might imagine dried fruit, but it just wasn't like that. And they were gorgeous to look at and absolutely delicious to eat. I think those were my favorite things. So,
Thank you. I actually try to stay out of the candy kitchen with apricots and oranges because it's like I can't help myself. They're so good, and it truly is. I mean, you're absolutely right. A lot of most apricots out there is like a dried Turkish apricot, and it's completely
yeah.
different. And I mean, it's a very timely process for the glazing, and that's a very old world Bissingers, and it's so fascinating. I mean, when my sister, brother, and I were sitting down, 5 years ago after we bought the company, and we were like, I can't believe we sell so many apricots and oranges. Like it's, but then we started eating, and we're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. They're just awesome.
Well,
It's just one of those things that we didn't understand how amazingly popular and how amazing, how core Bissinger's that collection was until we actually surrounded ourselves with it.
yeah. Yeah, they were delicious. And Dan, you could make the argument that it's fruit and that it's chocolate, and so it's kind of health food, really.
Absolutely. I actually do it all the time. I always say we're practically doctors.
Exactly, exactly. So you mentioned that some of the Bissinger family comes in, which I think is so cool. Who would you say though is your typical customer?
That's a great question. We kind of have three worlds. We have our Bissinger's boutiques, which people physically come in, and into the locations. We have the Bissinger's catalog slash online customer where they can either call us up and order or place the order online. And then we have the Bissinger's customer that will find our product in other retailers nationwide, such as Barnes and Noble or Dillard's or Neiman Marcus, or specialty grocery stores. We typically find that where our boutiques are, mostly female, probably about 65%, 70% of our customers are female. And because of the craftsmanship that goes into every Bissinger's confection, it's that person that just loves the finer things in life. It takes, you can, and typically it's gift giving. We a lot of self-consumption, but I always joke like it's so easy to get a bag of peanut M&Ms when you're at the grocery store. And those, of course, I just love them. I think they're delicious. But when you're giving a gift, you don't go buy a bag of peanut M&Ms for a birthday gift. You want to get a really nice gift. And, Bissinger's has built this reputation over literally centuries of this premium handcrafted product. And so we're really, we see a lot of our customers around the big gift giving holidays from Valentine's to Easter to Mother's Day, Father's Day, and of course, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Um, but, because to now we make anywhere from a 5-piece assortment to a 60-piece assortment. So the 60, some of those larger collections get fairly expensive, but we have a lot of from the 5-piece collection to our chocolate bars, which are very approachable price points. And so we're really widening our customer base. Um, our customer used to be much older, and that's great, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to keep the longevity of a brand, we need to make sure that the new generation learns and starts to appreciate Bissinger's. And one of the things that we've been very proud about, that my brother, sister, and I have done, is we've actually lowered the age demographic by quite a bit.
And so like to what? Where did it previously start and what's now the younger range?
In 2019, it was 65 to 70,
Yeah.
and currently we're in the 45 to 55 range.
Oh,
So
okay.
we've actually brought it down almost a generation.
Yeah.
And we're still proud of that because, I'm, you know, my 39, my brother's 36, my sister's early 40 and 40. So it's kind of, and it's been, it's been the packaging design, it's been the product selection, it's how we refreshed our stores, where we're selling our product. Um, it's podcast, it's how we market, it's how our photographers, take photos and, refresh the catalog. So we're just looking, the brand is now being, run by just a younger set of eyes. And I think people are, in my generation are starting to just pick up on it more.
hmm Well, and I would think that the 20s and 30s aren't that far behind because they're gaining such an appreciation of artisanally made things, and makers, the whole makers movement. So I bet you soon you'll be picking up those two decades too.
Absolutely. And I think what, like, we were just noticing this recently, there was, we kind of identified the legacy Bissinger's products and then, core Bissinger's. We try to take the brand and split it between three categories. And the legacy Bissinger's products, for example, the decorated cookies and the decorated mints, typically those were that legacy core customer that's been buying Bissinger's for 20 and 30 years. And typically they were a little bit older. Where now the 20 and 30-year-olds are buying the decorated cookies. And so
Mhm.
it's skipped it. We go from 20s to 60s. And it's
Mhm.
amazing to me how that's skipped. So, had we just said, well, let's get rid of that and only work, find something that millennials like, we would have completely missed this major opportunity, how things are coming back full circle.
Mhm. Do you find that you're looking at new flavors and new designs as you try to attract some of the younger people?
Yeah, I mean, we're absolutely. So we're working on new flavors and new designs, not specifically to say like I want new flavors and designs so I can find, sell to 20-year-olds. What we're saying is we want new flavors and designs to just keep the brand fresh and and relevant,
Right.
if that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yep, definitely. Keeping a business going is challenging enough, but why do you think, and you've touched on this a little bit, but why do you think Bissinger's has survived for literally hundreds of years?
The one of the things that really blew my mind, it was actually right when we bought the company. We had gone through, there's so many archives that came with Bissinger's that, and we've gone through, it's from VHS tapes of old commercials to every catalog since 1972. But there was a customer that actually gave me an archive of scanned in newspaper clippings from as far as he could go back, from the 1800s and 1900s. And one day, it was, in the middle of the summer, it was raining outside. Like, it was just one of those slow days. I just went through them. And what blew my mind was the way that Bissinger's marketed the company in newspapers, articles, and advertisements in the 1800s is about how we do it today. And that to me was mind blowing. The messaging was almost identical. Handcrafted French confections was was basically the whole premise of what they did in the 1800s, and the style was very similar. So I think the consistency, we it's been this kind of slow moving, no major macro change, not jumping on fads, just staying consistent, always focused on handcrafting the product with the finest ingredients. And I think that has just resonated with the generation so well. I can't really find a time in Bissinger's history where the brand and the identity looks so different than it did today, or even in the 1600s. I think that consistency is what has been one of the main drivers to its success.
Makes sense. Where outside of Bissinger's, if you go to St. Louis, can your products be found? I saw that Starbucks and Whole Foods carry some of your products.
At one time, we were in all 8,000 of the Starbucks, but currently we're in all the Barnes and Noble stores nationwide,
Okay.
which there's almost 700 of them. There might even be 700 now. And then we're in Paper Source. Sometimes a lot of because we're such a seasonal company, at the holidays we're in Dillard's, we're in Neiman Marcus, we're on Macy's.com. Some of the world markets have our chocolate bars. But one of the major focuses that we really spend a lot of our time on for our product line is independent specialty boutiques. And so because Bissinger's the heart of our company is that we're an independent specialty chocolate boutique, that's who we really want our products carried in. So wonderful, boutiques where typically the owner is running the store and they're like the ultimate brand ambassador. So those are the where you'll find, and there's over 1,000 of those across the country that now carry Bissinger's confections, whether it's just a few chocolate bars or seasonally or it's the whole line.
Great. Okay. And last question, what are the various ways people can A, learn more about your company and products, and B, purchase them both in St. Louis and by mail order?
Yeah, I mean the biggest driver for the business is Bissingers.com. And then if you become a customer, you get added to our catalog list. So there's between receiving the catalog for every season, shopping Bissingers.com. But one of my most exciting things is that we have actually a mobile app. So you can download the Bissingers app on your smartphone and completely shop with one click. So you can press this and hit order and it's done. Your credit card's it's saved into your phone. So you can order something in about 8 seconds on the app if you wanted to. And one of the reasons I think that's so neat is that we're a 350-year-old company and we have a mobile app.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think it's so fascinating. Like the catalog is extremely traditional and we love producing the catalog. It's a passion project of ours. And that's so much that goes into it. But the mobile app is the latest and greatest piece of technology for ordering. And that's, and we have a lot of customers, about 10 to 12% of our entire online ordering is done on the mobile app now. And it was at zero just, a little bit over a year ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, that makes a lot of sense that chocolate at your fingertips until it can literally be at your fingertips.
Yep.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for being my guest today and for talking chocolate. It's we're recording this in the morning and I am totally fine with talking about lots and lots of chocolate first thing in the morning. So well, we at Real Food Traveler, we always have an article that accompanies our podcast. So while people can listen to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, and pretty much everywhere you like to listen to podcasts, there will also be a way to listen to the podcast through the article that we'll have on realfoodtraveler.com. And we'll have some luscious, tantalizing photos of your chocolates and more information and direct links right to your website so that people can learn more and order lots and lots. And I was telling you when we were chatting before the podcast started that I've had many beautiful artisanal chocolates before, but they always kind of something about them. I think it's the sugar, the way they do the sugar just sort of zings me in the throat, and it's not really a pleasurable thing. And that the flavors are good, but they're not amazing. And like I said, I shared the chocolates you sent me with my family, and we all raved about it. And my son-in-law said, "Wow, that's how chocolate should taste." And I thought that says it. They were unique and creamy and wonderful and really, really something special. So I was honored to try them and honored to have you as a guest. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.